From tagging your songs in Spotify to running ads on Facebook and Instagram, understanding your most likely audience is key. Bobby Borg here, your music business coach with short, no BS advice that can help you turn your passion for music into a more successful business. Over the last 30 years, I've drummed in major label bands signed to Atlantic, wrote several music business books published by Billboard, and taught at major universities like USC Thornton. I recently found some footage of an interview with me and Freddie Nager talking about your most likely audience. Let's go ahead and listen in on what he had to say.
Is it important? How do you define customers? And then we'll also look at maybe the different ways that we can segment them, the different categories that we can segment them. And so let's go ahead and start with number one. How do you sort of define the target market?
Well, you already started off by pointing out quite correctly that the most likely customers are the ones you have to think about. Who are the ones who are most likely going to like your music? And I want everyone to get rid of these words from their vocabulary. Millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z, those are fake segments. And they're fake because we're stereotyping an entire generation when we know, if you remember that generation, you know 2 18-year-olds are not alike. One may be pre-med and love gangster rap, and the other may be a U.S. Army veteran who loves classical music.
Right.
So let's stop stereotyping entire generations. Instead, start thinking in terms of their lifestyle, their emotions, what they're going through, what they may enjoy. Start thinking about people that way. Because let's say you put out an album of, romantic music. All right, yes, it may appeal to 13-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 36-year-olds, a 65-year-old. But the point is you've developed this album that resonates with them emotionally. So now that you've kind of defined, part of this is defining who you are and what you stand for and what you want to express, and then identifying who wants to share in your emotions and your music and your ideas.
Right, and oftentimes they are, people that are similar to you, but what I've always found out as well is that's not necessarily always the case. So in other words, what a lot of bands do is they go, oh, because we're 19 years old and have tattoos and have piercings and like to drink this kind of beer, then everyone else probably does too as well, which I have found is not necessarily the case. So so not only sort of kind of getting a general sense of sort of identifying who your most likely audience would be, it's also important, as you pointed out, to discuss very, very specific things like maybe their wants and needs, their emotions, their behavior. Can you talk maybe about maybe get a little bit more into detail about those things? And there's buzzwords like psychographics and things like that, activities, interests, and opinions. How are those things important in the concept or for the possibility of creating tactics that are very, very effective in communicating with your audience?
So yeah, let's make this really practical, because the truth is most bands, musicians, they don't have the wherewithal to conduct major surveys.
Right.
And do highly targeted advertising.
Right.
Maybe the major record labels can, but most people cannot.
Right.
Instead, what I tell people is you can identify communities, and social media has made it really easy to identify certain communities. Right? So if you do country music, there is a country music community.
Right.
And if you're really into country music, there are different subgenres of country music. The internet has made it easy to find those groups, the subreddit groups, whatever it may be, that loves that subgenre of music. So know who you are, what kind of music you're creating, and then go find the community that matches it. Now, beyond music communities, there are other communities too. There's obviously a college community.
Right.
That's, we could stereotype and say they like a little more challenging music, a little more sophisticated music than, say, the 13-year-old community.
Right.
But we can easily target the college community, right? There's the yoga community. They've got, a shared interest, and most of them do not listen to death metal while they do yoga.
Right.
It just doesn't fit. Your downward dog and blasting music doesn't work too well. So use the internet, use social media to start identifying these groups of people who share interests. Yes, they may be of the same age, but sometimes they're not. But if you share their interests, your music is more likely to resonate with them.
Right, exactly, yeah. And what a lot of people don't understand, maybe by example, I can tell you I had a client come in and they said, so you know what, I don't know I'm not really sure where to play. You know, I'm tired of playing the Troubadour and the Viper Room. These are clubs in Los Angeles.
Right.
And I said, well, you know, what kind of music do you do? And he said, alternative rock music. And I said, okay, so would it be fair to say that your most likely fan is alternative rockers? And he said, yes.
Sure.
And I said, okay, cool, we're getting progress. So what do alternative rockers do? Would it be fair to say that, you know, generically speaking or, you know, broadly speaking, would it be fair to say maybe they're into X Games or skateboarding? Yes. Are they into like maybe potentially surfing? And they go, yeah, potentially. I could see alternative rockers, you know, that are into surfing, listening to alternative rock music. I said, okay, I'm going to take a wild guess that there's something called like the Long Beach like Surf Festival. It was a total guess, right? Typed it up. There actually is something that exists, and interestingly enough, they're having a championship or a competition.
Sure.
And interestingly enough, there's a stage where bands are going to be playing, and I'm like, and look, the number right here of how to submit your music. So in other words, understanding our customers can help us make wiser decisions. You know, so in other words, we're making marketing decisions based on our insights. We're connecting the dots here. Can you speak a little bit about that and whether or not, you know, and when you've seen this effective in maybe another way with a client that you've had, or?
You know, somebody like Lyle Lovett, who didn't really, he was kind of an anomaly because he was somewhat country, but he infused a lot of jazz into his music and a lot of blues, and he was considered a brilliant songwriter. He is a brilliant songwriter. So he wasn't going to do the typical country music small town circuit. Where he really succeeded was with the public radio crowd, people who wanted cerebral music. And he did very well in a place like LA, and they would play his music on KCRW, one of the local public radio stations, and he would sell out concerts here in Los Angeles. Like everyone thinks their music is unique. But what other lifestyle resonates with that music?
Sure.
So I love how Lyle Lovett does it. Jimmy Buffett has been doing it for decades.
Oh yeah, the beach crowd pretty much, or the
right?
The
and
escapism, as he puts it.
Escapists.
Yeah.
And so his biggest crowds are often in the Midwest, where everyone fantasizes about packing up and moving to Florida and living on beaches and drinking margaritas all day.
Right.
It's a lifestyle because he essentially created a genre into his own, a beach country or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But he wasn't getting airplay on most country music radio stations. Like, that's Jimmy Buffett. We don't really play that.
Right.
But his thing was concerts. I'm going to play a lot of concerts where people fantasize about the life that I live.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that worked for him.
Yeah, I mean, this is such an important concept. Again, another thing, you know, essentially that I think a lot of young musicians make the mistake about, because they're worried about, again, the sexy stuff, the social media algorithms, and all that stuff is important, but sometimes just looking at your customers, understanding who your customers are, and then making marketing decisions, you know, based on the insights can really make a difference.
If you want to learn more about how you can turn your passion for music into a more successful business, be sure to check out this video or the video linked in the description below.